In today's Succeed Without Selling Salon, we are talking about overcoming call reluctance. So there's a lot of ideas out there around how you can overcome not wanting to pick up the phone and call somebody. But I want to talk first about why we are reluctant to call people. And I think there's two reasons that work together, not to our advantage. And the first one is assumptions. So we make all sorts of assumptions about the other person, what they need, what they want, how they're going to react, what's going on in their world, you name it. We've got a ton of assumptions. And the second reason I believe that is involved is what our goal is. So I think typically our goal is to sell, which then leads to assumptions about how the other person is going to react to whatever we say, because we're going to be working toward a sale. And our assumptions really, I think, are from our own individual experiences. So we know how we feel when someone calls us and tries to sell us something. We put that feeling on our prospect or whoever it is we're reaching out to. And therefore, we don't want to do it. Why would we? Right? Because we've already decided what's going to happen when we do pick up the phone. But what if our goal was different? What if our goal was to start a conversation? What if our goal was to get a second conversation, like to start out with, I just want to learn. I just want to get to know you and your business. Period. Not going to try and sell you anything. Now, if that's our goal, then what are our assumptions? Well, some of our assumptions could be, why would they talk to us, right? They're busy. That's an assumption. They're in the middle of something. That's an assumption. They're not interested in building relationships with other people. That's an assumption. The truth is that we don't know. But if we say, okay, my goal is to start a conversation, one of the best ways to start a conversation is to have something to talk to them about, not about you, but about them. So it's really about being interested in them, what's going on with them, what the future looks like, what their present looks like. So, goal, let's just engage in conversation. So before I'm going to make that call, I'm going to do as much research as I can around them so that I can learn as much as possible about them before I ever pick up the phone. That way, when I do call to start a conversation, I have something to talk to them about. I have something about them that I can ask a question to get them going. One of the best assumptions to make, actually, is that people like to talk about themselves, because they do. It's not even really necessarily an assumption. Now, not everybody. There's people who don't like talking about themselves. That's okay too. But if you work with businesses and you do your research and you learn about what's going on with them as much as you possibly can, then that gives you a foundation upon which to engage. So you're going to reach out and say, I was reading on your website that blah, 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 or I saw an article in a magazine about your company or about your industry, and this is what it said, and I'm just curious if you're experiencing X, Y, and Z. Would love to learn more about what's going on, not so I can sell you something, but so that maybe I can connect you to a resource. So, this is my mission. My mission is not to be selling. I mean, you come right out and say that. It has to be true. It has to be genuine. You have to really have a goal of getting into a conversation so that you can learn. And I submit that if you tack onto that goal that you want to learn enough about them that you can identify resources that you have that you could introduce them to that would help them grow, problem solve, overcome adversity, whatever it is. If that's your mindset and that's your goal, it makes it much easier to make the call. Now, what happens is you do start engaging in conversation. You build trust with them because you follow through with why it is that you are reaching out, and you start building a relationship, and so they open up more and you learn more about them. And then if there is an opportunity for you to help them solve a problem that has to do with what you sell, it's an easier entry. It's easier to say, well, have you considered this, or have you thought about that, or have you tried whatever it is, would you be open to having another conversation about how we might be able to help you with that? Because this is what I'm hearing, and that is something that we do. Not saying that we're the right resource for you, but would you be open to a conversation about that? So the focus is not on sales. So you don't have to go through all of the gymnastics around assumptions about, okay, well, this is how they're going to react. Well, of course, if you were trying to sell them, of course, that's how they're going to react, right? So really, if you decided to do an outreach campaign, in my opinion, part of that outreach is going to be toward prospects, but part of that outreach is going to be toward resources. Because the more resources you have in your toolbox, the more valuable you are to everyone you know or meet. Now, seeking resources is a great way to relationship build and have really meaningful conversations with other people in the business community, some of which may be in your prospect pool, many of which will not be, and that's okay. So you can see, right? Goal, assumptions, these two play together because depending on what our goal is, that leads to then what we assume is going to be the reaction of the other person, which then prevents us from picking up the phone and calling. And then we do things like emailing, because it's easier for us. It's less threatening. We don't need to hear the annoyance that is in the person's voice or, whatever it is. Okay, except that email doesn't work. It doesn't start a conversation. It's one way. It's a monologue. It's not even necessarily going to get to them. And you're not going to be doing the relationship building or the trust building through email. Not going to happen. So, my advice is to change your goal. Step away from selling as your goal. You will gain business. You will grow your client base. If you let go of selling, if you let go of thinking about selling and change your goal to relationship building, to learning, to building a resource pool. Pick one of those three. And really it's because you will then engage in the activities that you need to be engaging in to do that relationship building, right? It's sort of silly, in my opinion, to have a goal of selling if it leads to assumptions that prevent you from engaging with your prospect, how are you going to sell? You're not. So, not about selling, about trust, about relationship building, about problem solving. So let's change our goal, which will then change our assumptions, which will then offer us the opportunity and hopefully enthusiasm to pick up the phone and call to start the conversation. Got it? Okay, now, if you have a question about selling or something that you are challenged by or struggling with, please reach out to me. You can email me at diane@hellbigenterprises.com. It's simple. You can send me a message on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram and let me know what your question is, and I'll address it on one of these Succeed Without Selling salons.